Most people lose the game of wealth and influence for one simple reason: they move like prey. They hesitate, they doubt, they wait for permission, while sharper minds seize opportunities before anyone else even notices them. In this video, we will solve the core problem that destroys your power, your inability to think like the predator in a world built on hunting instincts. If you do not reshape your psychology, someone more ruthless will shape it for you. Look around you. Every day is a silent battlefield. No blood, no swords, no banners. Only transactions, glances, decisions, alliances, and betrayals. The modern world pretends to be civil, humane, and fair. Yet beneath the surface lies the same ancient structure: hunters and hunted, dominators and the dominated. If you observe carefully, you will notice that power never gravitates toward the gentle, the hesitant, or the overly moral. It flows like a river toward those who understand timing, perception, and fear. These individuals do not wait for fortune, they stalk it. They do not hope for respect, they manufacture it. And most importantly, they do not behave as prey hoping not to be eaten. They study the terrain, identify weaknesses, and strike before the herd understands what happened. In this journey, I will not teach you kindness, nor the illusions of fairness that the weak cling to for comfort. I will show you the mindset predators use to acquire money and influence, not through brute force, but through psychological precision. The world belongs to those who see through it, and after this, you will never see it the same again. Most people imagine that power is taken by force. They picture a dramatic confrontation, a clash of wills, a moment where the world recognizes a victor. But the truth is colder. Power is taken long before anyone notices, and usually by the one who refuses to behave like prey. Tell me, when you walk into a room, do you observe, or do you wait to be observed? Do you calculate, or do you hope circumstances will be gentle to you? Hesitation is the first wound prey inflicts on itself, not by an enemy, but by its own indecision. Think of the Roman Senate, paralyzed by debate while Julius Caesar marched with certainty. The Senate had numbers, they had tradition, they had laws, but Caesar had one advantage that eclipsed them all: he moved. They hesitated, and in hesitation, they surrendered the throne without realizing it. You must understand this: the world disguises itself as orderly, polite, and fair. Yet beneath the veneer lies a single question: who moves first? The predator does not wait for a sign that the moment is right. He makes the moment right. He studies angles, not ethics. He studies timing, not approval. He studies weaknesses, not feelings. And in studying, he discovers what the prey never notices: opportunities rarely arrive wrapped in reassurance. Consider your own life. How many times have you sensed an opportunity but waited for validation, hoping someone would guarantee you the outcome? How many times have you watched another person take the very thing you wanted simply because they acted before doubt could infect them? This is the psychology of hunting. Acting before the herd understands what is happening. The weak tell themselves stories about fairness. They believe that virtue will reward them if they are patient enough. But predators know that patience is only useful when combined with calculation. A lion does not attack at every moment, it waits. But its waiting is not passive, it is observation sharpening intent. When the movement begins, it is decisive, swift, and without hesitation. You must learn the same discipline to wait without being idle and to act without doubting. Think of the boardroom, the workplace, the marketplace, today's hunting grounds. The person who hesitates to speak loses the negotiation. The one who hesitates to ask loses the opportunity. The one who hesitates to position himself loses influence to someone less capable but more strategically assertive. The modern world rewards movement, not merit. Let me give you a quiet, almost invisible example of manipulation. In any group conversation, there is always a moment when silence falls. Prey waits for someone else to fill it, fearing judgment. Predators use that silence as a blade. They speak first, and by doing so, frame the direction of the entire discussion. Their words become the reference point. Everyone else becomes a reaction. This is not dominance through force, it is dominance through timing. You must begin to question your instinct to wait. Ask yourself, what exactly am I waiting for? Most people wait for conditions that will never exist. Absolute certainty, zero risk, universal approval. Meanwhile, the ones who acquire money and influence accept that no environment is perfect. They move anyway. This is why they rise. Their psychology bends reality instead of submitting to it. History is full of examples. The Medici bankers thrived not because they were the richest at the start, but because they acted when others were paralyzed by fear. When rival families hesitated to fund ventures that seemed risky, the Medici stepped in, forging alliances that later ruled cities. They understood that hesitation is the tax the weak pay to the strong. Ask yourself in your own ambitions, are you paying that tax? You must learn to calculate risk with the precision of a hunter studying the terrain. What do you want? Who stands in your way? What weaknesses surround the situation? What timing will maximize your advantage? These are not questions prey asks. These are the questions predators live by. And remember this, every hesitation you make is a signal. Others can sense it. They can feel your uncertainty, your reluctance, your fear of conflict. And in sensing it, they position themselves above you, around you, and eventually over you. So let me leave you with a challenge. The next time opportunity appears, faintly, subtly, even imperfectly, you must decide. Will you step forward before anyone realizes what's happening? Or will you wait and watch another person seize what could have been yours? Because the predator already knows his answer. The prey always pretends it has more time. And now, before you decide which one you are, we move to the next truth, the art of controlling the arena itself. Power is rarely won in open conflict. It is won by shaping the environment in which conflict occurs. The strongest individuals do not merely participate in the game. They design the arena, set the rules, and force others to respond within boundaries they created. So let me ask you directly, in your daily life, are you entering someone else's arena, or are you constructing your own? Most people wander into situations unprepared, reacting to conditions imposed on them. They negotiate in rooms chosen by others. They argue on terms defined by others. They chase opportunities invented by someone else's imagination. This is how prey behaves, moving inside a territory already mapped out by the hunter. History is clear on this. Consider how rulers strengthened their influence not by brute strength alone, but by engineering the environment to their advantage. When princes held council meetings, they chose halls where their elevated seat forced every eye upward. When diplomats visited foreign courts, they were escorted through long corridors designed to weaken their confidence before negotiations began. Everything was intentional. Everything shaped the psychology of the interaction. Now reflect on your own life. How many times have you entered a conversation where the other person controlled the tempo, the tone, even the emotional climate? How often have you found yourself explaining, defending, or justifying while the other person simply listened and judged? This happens not because they are smarter, but because they seized the arena before you even realized you were in one. To control the arena means mastering three things: environment, expectations, and emotional atmosphere. Let us break these open. Start with the environment. A predator chooses terrain that magnifies his strengths. He selects the meeting location, the timing, even the proximity between himself and the other person. Something as simple as sitting at the head of a table shifts power subconsciously. Something as subtle as choosing a quieter location forces the other person to lean in, giving you control over the rhythm of the exchange. These seem small, but in psychology, small always becomes decisive. Then consider expectations. The one who frames the purpose of a conversation defines its direction. If you open a meeting by calmly stating, "Here's what we're here to settle today," you quietly strip the other person of initiative. They become responders, not creators, and responders rarely win. Powerful individuals understand that the first narrative often becomes the accepted narrative. They define the issue before anyone else can reshape it. And finally, the emotional atmosphere. A predator knows that emotions are not accidents. They are conditions to be engineered. If you maintain composure while the other person grows agitated, you subtly claim the role of authority. If you speak slowly while they rush their words, you impose your rhythm on their nervous system. Control the emotional climate, and you control the range of possible outcomes. Let me give you a real example of this in modern life. In corporate negotiations, skilled executives often schedule meetings immediately after lunch when their opponent's energy is lower. They use cooler rooms to increase alertness and remove distractions. They place themselves between the daylight source and the others so that every glance toward them is slightly disorienting. None of this is accidental. They win before they speak. Ask yourself, how many times have you lost not because you lacked intelligence, but because you entered a battlefield someone else had already arranged? How many opportunities slipped away because you were reacting instead of directing? You must understand something. Controlling the arena is not about dominance through aggression. It is dominance through architecture, psychological architecture. You shape the walls, the lighting, the expectations, the narrative, the emotional tone, and in doing so, you shape the mind of the person sitting across from you. This is why weak individuals never rise. They rely on talent, hoping it will be enough. But talent is powerless inside an arena designed to diminish it. The strong rely on structure. They build it. They bend it. They use it. So now the question becomes unavoidable. Are you ready to construct the environment instead of surviving within it? Are you ready to define the boundaries others must operate inside? Perception has always been the currency of power. The world judges not by truth, but by the image it can most easily grasp, and those who rise understand this law better than any philosopher or general. Tell me, when people look at you, do they see strength or uncertainty, direction or confusion? Your image speaks long before your voice ever does. People form judgments in seconds, and those judgments rarely change unless you deliberately reshape them. History is filled with rulers who maintained control not through greater armies, but through carefully engineered appearances that kept their enemies unsure and their allies obedient. Consider the example of Emperor Augustus. He understood that Rome, exhausted by years of civil war, feared tyrants. So he presented himself not as a dictator, but as a humble servant of the Republic. He kept republican titles, wore modest clothing, and acted with restraint, yet all real power flowed silently into his hands. That is the art. Disguise intention while displaying exactly what others wish to see. Power wrapped in familiarity. Authority softened by humility. The greatest manipulators create illusions so convincing that even their rivals defend them. Meanwhile, the truth sits in plain sight, hidden not by secrecy but by brilliant presentation. But what about you? Do you shape perception, or do you let others define it for you? When you speak, do you project certainty, or do you reveal hesitation you never intended to show? Understand this: the world rarely analyzes you. It simply reacts to whatever image you give it first. Real influence is built on this foundation. If people see you as competent, they trust your decisions. If they see you as desirable, they want your approval. If they see you as powerful, they fear offending you. And if they see you as unpredictable, they tread carefully, giving you room to maneuver. Most do not realize how simple shifts change perception. Lowering your tone makes others associate you with authority. Pausing before speaking implies thoughtfulness. Maintaining stillness forces others to adjust their energy to yours. These small behaviors accumulate into a gravitational field that pulls attention toward you without effort. Let me give you a quiet example from the modern workplace. Imagine a meeting where everyone is scrambling to impress. Most people speak quickly, laugh nervously, and over-explain. But a person who speaks slowly, offers concise statements, and remains composed instantly becomes the psychological anchor of the room. Others orbit around him. Why? Because perception is gravity. People fall into the orbit of whatever feels stable, confident, and controlled. They surrender authority to the person who looks like he already possesses it. You have seen this your entire life, but perhaps you never recognized the mechanism. The mind trusts the image more than the truth. You must become intentional about this. Ask yourself, what image helps me reach my goals? What traits must I display to influence the people around me? What illusions must I build to protect my weaknesses? This is not deception for cruelty's sake. It is strategy, the discipline of controlling what others believe before they decide how to treat you. Remember, this truth is optional, but perception is mandatory. You may hold great talent, deep intelligence, or valuable insight, yet none of it matters unless others can see it. The predator ensures that his image enters the room before he does, shaping expectations, shaping reactions, shaping the entire field of possibility. So ask yourself once more, who are you in the eyes of others? Not who you believe you are internally, but the figure you project into the world. That projection determines your opportunities, your alliances, and even your enemies. Change the image, and the entire architecture of your life shifts with it. Understand this final truth: once perception bends in your favor, people begin offering you advantages you never asked for. Doors open without knocking. Respect arrives without demand. Influence grows without force, and soon you realize the image you crafted rules long before you speak. But the question remains: once you control how others see you, what will you do with that power next? The answer will determine whether you rise as a strategist or vanish as another forgotten observer today. Resource extraction is the true engine of power, not kindness, not harmony, not emotional reciprocity. The predator sees every human interaction through a single lens: what value exists here, and how efficiently can I extract it? The weak believe relationships are built on mutual understanding. The strong know they are built on mutual usefulness. So let me ask you directly, when you deal with others, are you thinking about being liked? Or are you calculating what they offer? Most people enter conversations hoping to connect emotionally. They share too much. They seek validation. They confuse openness with strength. But emotional engagement without purpose is the fastest way to lose leverage. It blinds you. It softens your instincts. It makes you predictable. Powerful individuals do the opposite. They separate sentiment from strategy. They analyze people as reservoirs of resources, information, opportunities, influence, skill, or access. And they draw from these reservoirs with precision. This principle is as old as politics itself. Consider the alliances of Italian city-states. Florence, Venice, Milan, each formed relationships not out of affection, but out of advantage. A prince aligned with a rival not because he admired him, but because that rival possessed troops, money, or territory useful for a specific outcome. When the benefit faded, so did the alliance. No drama, no heartbreak, only calculation. Why, then, do you cling to bonds that drain you? Why do you waste energy explaining yourself to people who cannot elevate you? Why do you keep emotional ties with those who offer nothing but distraction? You must begin to see others as they truly exist within your life, sources of strength or sources of weakness. This is not cruelty. It is clarity. Emotional excess is a luxury reserved for those who have already secured power. You are not there yet. Let me give you an example from the modern world. A skilled entrepreneur never reveals his real intentions when seeking investors. He listens first. He gathers intelligence. How much capital they control, how urgently they seek returns, how emotionally influenced they are by stories versus numbers. He extracts information long before he reveals anything meaningful about himself. And only then does he position his offer in a way that appeals to their motivations. He is not trying to be understood. He is not trying to make friends. He is extracting the resource he came for: capital. The same applies to you. Whether you need knowledge, status, mentorship, or access, your task is to identify who holds the resource and how best to acquire it. And often, this requires emotional detachment because emotions obscure value. Think of the court of Louis XIV. Courtiers surrounded the king every day, desperate for his attention, but Louis granted favor only to those who could provide something he needed. Political compliance, secrets from rival factions, or control over key regions. Affection was irrelevant. The Sun King valued utility above loyalty. Are you capable of doing the same? Can you maintain relationships without falling into emotional entanglement? Can you present warmth while internally calculating advantage? Can you listen with empathy while thinking like a strategist? Understand this: resource extraction is not exploitation. Exploitation requires harming others. Extraction requires identifying mutual gain and directing it toward your objectives. Even predators maintain ecosystems. They do not destroy every creature they encounter. They simply take what ensures their survival and ascendancy. The weak drain themselves, trying to be everything to everyone. The strong conserve their emotional energy and deploy it only where outcomes justify investment. This is why predators rise. Their attention is not scattered. Their emotions are not spilled carelessly. Their focus remains sharp. You must learn to ask a question the weak never dare speak aloud. What is the value here? When you meet someone, do not wonder whether they like you. Wonder what drives them, what they fear, what they desire, what they lack. Because once you know someone's internal landscape, their value becomes visible. And once their value is visible, the extraction becomes effortless. Now consider your own life. How often have you given loyalty to those who brought you nothing? How often have you weakened yourself emotionally for people who never strengthened you strategically? These are the habits of prey, not predators. But once you replace emotional engagement with strategic clarity, a transformation begins. Relationships become structured. Decisions become rational. Your energy stops leaking into meaningless exchanges. And you start ascending with purpose. Speed is a weapon. Silence is a shield. Together, they form one of the most feared strategies in the arsenal of the powerful, striking first and striking quietly. The weak imagine power as loud, dramatic, and overwhelming. But those who truly rise know that decisive action delivered without warning rewrites the entire structure of a situation before anyone else has time to adapt. So let me ask you, when opportunity appears, do you announce your intentions, or do you act while others are still thinking? Most people telegraph their moves. They reveal their plans, hoping for approval or advice. But every word you speak about your ambition creates resistance, jealousy, or sabotage. The moment others know your direction, they will either try to obstruct it or get there before you. This is why the predator moves in silence. Not because he fears competition, but because secrecy multiplies his advantage. History offers countless lessons. Consider the rise of the Borgias. Their power did not come from brute strength, but from timing and secrecy. They acted swiftly, forming alliances before rivals noticed, removing enemies before whispers could spread, and seizing positions while others were still debating. Their opponents were not defeated by superior force. They were defeated by superior speed and discretion. You must understand this. Hesitation is louder than action. When you wait, you reveal uncertainty. When you announce your goals, you expose your vulnerabilities. But when you strike swiftly, without explanation or warning, you leave others scrambling to interpret what already happened. By the time they understand, the outcome is irreversible. Think of your own ambitions. How many times have you talked about your plans instead of executing them? How many opportunities dissolved because you shared them with someone who projected their fears onto you? Or worse, someone who quietly positioned themselves to take the same opportunity before you could. You cannot blame them. Prey exposes itself. Predators do not. The psychology here is simple. Humans fear what they cannot predict. When you move quietly, you create uncertainty. When you move quickly, you create shock. And when you combine both, you create dominance. People respect results far more than intentions. They respect power accomplished, not power discussed. Take the example of a modern entrepreneur who quietly acquires key suppliers before launching his product. His competitors find out only when it is too late. They cannot produce at the same scale because he already controls the pipeline. He didn't brag. He didn't announce his moves. He executed. And in execution, he achieved leverage that words could never secure. Or consider the political strategist who builds alliances in private, strengthening his position while his rivals boast publicly about their influence. When the moment arrives, the strategist reveals his support base, overwhelming his opponents who thought they understood the landscape. Their mistake. They relied on what they could see. He relied on what they couldn't. What about you? Are you shaping your moves in silence? Or are you giving others the blueprint to dismantle you? Every ambition you speak aloud becomes a target. Every plan you reveal becomes a trap waiting to be sprung on you. Silence protects vision. Speed protects opportunity. This strategy is not merely about secrecy, it is about psychology. When you strike quietly, you control the narrative. People will interpret your actions based on their own limitations, not your intentions. And this confusion grants you power, because it keeps others reactive while you remain proactive. Speed is equally crucial. You cannot afford to move at the pace of the herd. When an opening appears, you must step into it before it closes. Opportunities do not linger for those who hesitate. They belong to those who move before doubt grows strong enough to stop them. And yet, understand this: striking quietly does not mean striking recklessly. The predator prepares long before he moves. His silence is not emptiness, it is strategy. His speed is not chaos, it is calculation. When he acts, every step is intentional. Ask yourself, what doors could you have opened if you moved faster? What victories could you have claimed if you acted before seeking approval? What heights could you have reached if you trusted your strategy instead of exposing it to the judgment of the insecure? You will find that your greatest losses came not from failure, but from hesitation. Respect, utility. These are the only currencies that matter in power. Everything else, affection, fairness, goodwill, is decoration for the naive. So ask yourself honestly, which currency do people associate with you? Do they fear crossing you? Do they respect your competence? Do they find you useful enough to keep around? If they feel none of these, then you hold no influence at all. Throughout history, rulers who endured understood this triad deeply. They wielded each currency with precision, knowing that people obey for different reasons. Some obey because they fear consequences. Some obey because they admire strength. Some obey because your existence benefits them. The mistake of the weak is believing they must rely on only one. The strong blend them according to circumstance. Consider fear first. It is raw, immediate, and unforgettable. A person who fears offending you will police themselves without your intervention. Fear creates boundaries that require no explanation. This is why harsh rulers often survived longer than beloved ones. They inspired caution, and caution reduces rebellion. But fear must be engineered wisely. If you become unpredictable or cruel without strategy, fear mutates into hatred. Hatred grows in the dark, waiting for opportunity. You do not want hatred. You want calculated fear, the quiet awareness that challenging you carries a cost. Can you create that feeling? Can you enforce consequences for disrespect without emotional chaos? This is the first test of your psychological power. Then comes respect. Respect is not earned through kindness or generosity. It is earned by demonstrating competence, discipline, and control. People respect what they cannot easily replace. They respect the one who sees further, moves faster, and thinks more sharply than they do. When you speak with clarity and act with purpose, respect accumulates around you like armor. Even your rivals hesitate to undermine you because they recognize the value of your mind. Ask yourself, do people trust your judgment? Do they lean toward your words when you speak? If not, you have not cultivated respect. You have cultivated familiarity, and familiarity destroys influence. The third currency is utility, perhaps the most underestimated, yet often the most powerful. A person who finds you useful will overlook flaws, forgive mistakes, and defend you when needed. Why? Because your existence benefits theirs. Kings kept advisors not out of fondness, but because those advisors offered insight no one else could. Modern leaders keep certain individuals close because they open doors, gather information, or neutralize threats. To be useful is to be necessary, and the necessary are rarely abandoned. Think of your own life. Who relies on you? Who needs your skills, your knowledge, your perspective? If the answer is no one, then your position is fragile. But let me reveal something deeper. The most powerful individuals do not choose one currency. They shift between all three effortlessly. With subordinates, they use fear. With equals, they command respect. With superiors, they offer utility. This creates a layered fortress around their position. Attack from below is discouraged by fear. Attack from the side is neutralized by respect. Attack from above is softened by usefulness. Is this manipulation? Perhaps. But manipulation is merely the art of understanding human nature more clearly than others. Let me give you a modern example. A quiet strategist inside a corporation positions himself as the one who solves crises. He becomes useful to leadership. His calm competence earns respect from peers. And to those who challenge him, he responds with sharp consequences, subtle enough to avoid backlash, strong enough to instill fear. Within months, he controls a territory without ever announcing ambition. People protect him, defer to him, and avoid provoking him. He rose not by shouting, begging, or displaying moral purity. He rose by choosing the correct currency in each interaction. Now ask yourself, which currency must you strengthen first? Which one will raise your influence fastest? Which one fits your environment, your personality, and your goals? Because once you master these currencies, the game changes permanently. People begin shaping themselves around you. They hesitate before challenging you. They seek your approval before acting. Your very presence becomes a form of leverage. But this mastery leads to a final question, one that few ever answer correctly. Once you wield fear, respect, and utility, how do you maintain power without being consumed by it? In the end, control is never taken by force. It is taken by understanding, by seeing the impulses others hide and guiding them as if it were their own idea. You now know the principle. The greatest power is invisible. The hand that moves the world is the hand no one notices. People obey stories they believe they chose. They follow paths they think they discovered, and the one who quietly designed those paths. That is the true ruler. Ask yourself, who have you allowed to shape your choices? Whose voice echoes in your decisions? And more importantly, whose choices will you quietly shape from this moment onward? If this lesson struck you, then step deeper into the shadows with me. Comment your thoughts below. Your strategies, your victories, your questions. Subscribe if you want more psychological and Machiavellian insights that sharpen your mind and harden your will. And share this video with someone who still believes control requires force. They need this lesson more than they know. The next move is yours.